Get football here, and I certainly am always thinking about the NFL draft. We're less than a month away. And my colleague and friend Matt Miller has a brand new mock out. It's available as of this morning. It's all 7 rounds. So for those of you who are real draft nerds, you can look all the way through it. And what you saw there were the top 10. But here is the headline. Matt sees Ty Simpson falling all the way through round 1 and going to the Jets in the first pick of the second round, thus 33rd overall. And I will just say this right now. I want to bring Matt into the conversation with Tim Hasselbeck and Dan Graziano. Matt, to me, by far the most interesting storyline that is developing here is where Ty Simpson goes. We all know Mendoza is going to know number 1, and we have a fair sense of which the other players are that are going to be, going to go the rest of the top of that first round. But then the question, I've seen Ty Simpson mocked as high as the early teens and now as low as out of the first round entirely from you. Why do you see him falling that way?
Yeah, guys, that's where I have him ranked. I have him as the number 40 overall player in this draft. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about where he's valued by teams, where he's ranked by those of us in the media. I can't find one team that tells me they believe he will go in the first round. What you get is a lot of teams that say, yeah, I think someone else will do it. We don't value him there, but we think someone else will do it based on quarterback need, positional value, and because generally those players do get pushed up the board artificially this time of year. But it reminds me a lot of the Shedeur Sanders conversation last year where we all sat around and said, okay, we don't think this team will take him in the first round, but maybe someone will. And I think it's similar with Simpson this year where I can't find one club that says, gosh, we got a big old grade on him. We think he's going to be a first round pick. It's more so you hear teams say, yeah, like maybe the Jets will do it, or maybe the Cardinals will trade back into the first and do it. Maybe the Rams will make him a quarterback of the future type pick. But in terms of teams that have a true first-round grade on him, that doesn't exist, at least in the conversations that I'm having in the weeks before the draft.
You are the second person I've had say almost exactly that to me in almost exactly the same way in the last couple of days. Dan Graziano, I see you nodding. I mean, you're there at the owners' meetings, and you've been following this all over the place. What is your sense of that?
Yeah, very similar to what Matt is saying. Like the draft rise and fall is something of a myth. Like we talk about, mock drafts. He was up here, now he's down. I think when the teams really dig in on these guys, they find their level. And I think Ty Simpson is one of several very interesting quarterbacks that are not Fernando Mendoza that teams are going to look at in probably the middle rounds of the draft. Does that mean a second-round pick for Ty Simpson? Entirely possible. Could he sneak into the first round? Entirely possible. But much like Matt is saying, I'm not talking to a team that's indicating to me that, oh, we feel like he's a first-round talent, we have to take him there. And that includes several teams that have multiple first-round picks, right, that could use quarterback help short-term and or long-term. I do think these guys historically have tended to get pushed up the board, but I also think the teams are starting to learn their lessons about maybe not wanting to do that to the extent that they used to.
The Jets and the Browns are 2 of those that jump immediately to mind, Dan, teams that you think need quarterbacks and have multiple first-round picks. Tim Hasselbeck, you are a quarterback expert. And I'll remind everyone of just how right you were on Drake May months before the draft when there were some people that weren't as high on him. If someone were asking you, if the GM, if you were a scout, and they were saying, tell me exactly what Ty Simpson should be, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say, he has some film that would make you feel like he should be a first-round draft pick. The problem is, the recent history of guys that, don't have a huge sample size in terms of playing experience in college. It's been ugly. It has not been good. And so, look, that's reason to pause. Like, plain and simple, that's reason to pause. And then, there are other aspects of him in terms of physical stature and things of that nature that you wouldn't necessarily have him as a lock as a first-round draft pick. Now, I would say this. It's not unusual for guys to kind of be mocked in the first round, and then it happens where they don't. Like Will Levis a few years ago, or, players like that. Now, I would say this, and I know, Matt is putting a mock together, and he isn't going all 7 rounds and all of those things. Here's what I would say in terms of, ending up as a first-round draft pick. I don't think it's going to happen in the first half of the first round. But what I do think happens is it does not make sense, in my opinion, if I was a general manager, to draft a quarterback, in early second round. because you don't get the fifth-year option. The value of the fifth-year option on a starting quarterback, because if you are right about Ty Simpson and you take him at 36, like you've really put yourself in a tough spot because you don't have as much time to evaluate him, and then you got to pay him real quarterback money sooner than you would have to otherwise. So I do think you have to get back into the first round if you're thinking of taking him in the top 40.
Very quickly, Dan.
Especially if you're not going to play him right away. Jordan Love being the example, right, that everybody would point to with the Packers. They knew they weren't going to pay him right away. Important to get him in the first round, so they had that fifth-year option.
Matt, finish it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one way to look at it, Tim. I would say this. If you take a quarterback in round one, you're married to that quarterback for 5 years. And we've seen examples of that not working. You take a quarterback in round two and it doesn't work out, you get right back in next year when we have Arch Manning, Dante Moore, Brendan Sorsby, a much richer quarterback class. So I think for the Jets, and maybe that's hedging, but it's the idea of let's not marry a quarterback in this draft. Let's date one because the prospects next year look a lot better than what you have in this year's class because they ended up with that number 2 overall pick.
It's a good analogy. Matt Miller again, 7-round mock draft that I'll be studying intently on an airplane later today.
5 days away from the draft getting underway in Pittsburgh. Let's take a look at Jordan Reed's top 10 in his mock draft. 8 of the 10 players participated in on-field workouts at their pro days within the last 2 weeks. Both Sonny Styles and Jeremiah Love were at their pro days, but just met with teams and did interviews, so no workouts for them. Jordan Reed joining us now here on SportsCenter. Which of the players that you saw this week, whether it was pro days, whether it was from what you heard from scouts, who has improved their draft stock the most within this stretch of the offseason?
Yeah, Courtney, as you mentioned, there was a wealth of prospects on the field last week at their pro day, but the one that really impressed me and scouts as well was Cardinal Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. He's just the next one in a long lineage of these Ohio State first-round wide receivers that I think is going to go on to be a very good professional. Now, with Cardinal Tate, I have him as my wide receiver 1. Very silky smooth route runner, great hands. And also, he can do everything that you want him to do at the position. The player that he reminds me of, and he wasn't as productive coming out of college, but he reminds me a lot of Devontae Smith when he was coming out of Alabama, who's going on to be a very productive professional player. I think his ceiling probably is the Kansas City Chiefs at number 9 overall, but don't be surprised if he goes as high as the Tennessee Titans at number 4 overall.
Yeah, Cardinal Tate is a problem. You got to love how he runs his route. Such an experienced player. Meanwhile, Ty Simpson, not that much experience, but he worked out at Alabama's pro day this week, and he said he's absolutely a first-round quarterback. So what's your perspective on where Simpson should be drafted?
Yeah, Ty Simpson has been a hot debate this week on social media, on everywhere that you want to see. But to me, I just don't see a first-round quarterback with Ty Simpson, and the biggest reason is because of the sample size. We're talking about somebody that's only been a 15-game starter on the collegiate level. Now, he did have a great stretch during the season. In that 8-game stretch, he had just under 2,000 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But once the month of November came, he just looked like a completely different player, whether that was against Indiana in the college football playoff, down the backstretch of the season as well. So the big dilemma about Ty Simpson is, which player am I getting? Am I getting the player pre-November or am I getting the player post-November? So right now, I just would feel a little bit uncomfortable taking him in the first round because of the small sample size.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, some of the throws that he made were incredible, and he ended up throwing 28 touchdowns in his 15 starts for Alabama last season. Not a bad number. Jordan Reed, we appreciate you for joining us on SportsCenter.